The fluorescent lights above the surgical bay flickered as I sprinted down the corridor, my white coat billowing behind me. The antiseptic smell mixed with something metallic, blood, fresh and urgent. Through the observation window, I could see the operating room in chaos. Dr. Kemper, our chief of transplant surgery, stood with her hands raised, gloves dripping crimson, while nurses scrambled around a young body on the table. "We're losing him," someone shouted. I pressed my palm against the cold glass, my breath fogging the surface. The patient was 16 years old. His name was Marcus Chen, and somewhere in this hospital, someone had just made a sacrifice that would either save his life or haunt everyone involved forever. The intercom crackled. "Dr. Reyes to transplant coordination. Dr. Reyes, immediately." I ran. My footsteps echoed through empty hallways, past gurneys and medication carts, past families waiting in plastic chairs with coffee cups turning cold in their hands. When I reached the coordinator's office, I found something that made my stomach drop. A man sat in the corner, his head in his hands, shoulders shaking. His hospital gown was stained. An IV still dangled from his arm. "Tell me you didn't just come from surgery," I whispered. He looked up. His eyes were red, exhausted, desperate. "You can't tell him," he said. "Promise me. Don't tell him I'm the donor." But what I discovered in the next 72 hours wasn't just about a transplant. It was about the price of love, the weight of secrets, and the impossible choice between truth and mercy. My name is Dr. Noah Reyes, and I'm 27 years old. 6 months into my residency at Hospital St. Halstead, and I still feel like I'm drowning most days. The coffee tastes like burnt rubber. The elevator always smells faintly of bleach and sadness. And I've learned that the difference between life and death often comes down to seconds, and sometimes to decisions no medical school textbook can prepare you for. St. Halstead sits on the edge of a mid-sized American city, the kind of place where the skyline has exactly 3 tall buildings, and everyone knows someone who works here. It's a teaching hospital, which means it's always full of residents like me, exhausted, caffeinated, trying to look confident while internally questioning every choice we make. The building itself is a maze of interconnected wings, some dating back to the 1960s with their institutional green tiles and narrow corridors, others brand new with floor-to-ceiling windows and art installations meant to calm anxious patients. The old sections creak at night. The new sections hum with expensive HVAC systems. I've learned to navigate both by feel, by the muscle memory of exhaustion. I grew up in Houston, the son of immigrants who worked 3 jobs between them so I could have a future they never had. My mother cleaned houses. My father worked construction. They spoke broken English but perfect love, and every time I put on this white coat, I carry their sacrifice with me. My father's hands were calloused and scarred from years of manual labor. My mother's knees hurt from decades of scrubbing other people's floors. They never complained. They just worked, saved, and pushed me toward something better. When I got my acceptance letter to medical school, my mother cried for an hour. Not sad tears, proud ones. "Mijo," she said, holding my face in her work-worn hands. "You will help people the way we never could." That memory lives in my chest like a second heartbeat, pushing me forward on the days when I'm too tired to think straight. The transplant wing is on the 4th floor, accessible by a restricted elevator that requires a badge scan. It's quieter than the rest of the hospital. The walls are painted a calming seafoam green. There are paintings of beaches and forests, carefully selected to give patients something peaceful to look at while they wait for organs that might never come. The silence there is different from other floors. It's not peaceful exactly. It's more like held breath, like everyone is waiting for news that could change everything. I arrived that morning at 5:47 a.m. The sun was just beginning to bleed orange across the horizon, casting long shadows through the floor-to-ceiling windows in the lobby. I swiped my badge, grabbed terrible coffee from the residence lounge, and reviewed the patient list on my tablet. The lounge was empty except for Dr. Patricia Moore, a surgical resident in her 2nd year, who sat in the corner staring at her phone with the glazed expression of someone who'd been awake for 36 hours straight. "Morning," I said. She looked up slowly, as if processing language required extra effort. "Is it? Morning, I mean. I've lost track. It's Thursday." "God, really? I thought it was still Tuesday." She rubbed her eyes. "You on transplant today?" "Yeah, Chen case. The kid who's been waiting forever? I heard they finally found a match." "Yeah." I didn't elaborate. Even then, something about the situation felt delicate, like information that shouldn't be shared casually in the residence lounge. Moore went back to her phone. I took my coffee and headed to the transplant wing, the tablet warm in my hand, Marcus Chen's file open on the screen. Marcus Chen, 16 years old, end-stage kidney failure, on dialysis for 18 months. Blood type, AB negative, one of the rarest. UNOS match, pending. Prognosis without transplant, critical. I'd met Marcus 3 times before. The first time he was playing video games on his phone while connected to a dialysis machine. His mother sleeping in the chair beside him, her hand resting on his leg. He had dark circles under his eyes, but still managed to joke about how the dialysis machine sounded like it was beatboxing. Yo, Dr. Reyes, you think if I auto-tuned this thing, I could drop a mixtape? His mother, Diane, had smiled weakly. She was a small woman with graying hair pulled into a tight bun, worry lines etched deep into her forehead. She wore professional clothes even to dialysis appointments, blazers and slacks, pearls at her throat, like she was trying to maintain dignity in a situation that stripped it away daily. She worked as a paralegal downtown, handling estate law for a small firm. Single income. No extended family nearby. I'd learned these details gradually through small conversations, the biographical fragments that patients and families share when they spend enough time in hospitals. How's he really doing? She'd asked me quietly, while Marcus wasn't listening, her voice dropping to a whisper. I'd wanted to lie. I'd wanted to tell her everything would be fine. Instead, I said, "We're doing everything we can." That was the truth. But the truth also was that AB-negative kidneys were rare. Marcus had been on the transplant list for over a year. Every week that passed, his body grew weaker. His energy faded. His labs showed increasing toxicity. The dialysis was keeping him alive, but barely. It was like trying to bail out a sinking ship with a teaspoon. Eventually, the water wins. The second time I met Marcus, he'd just finished a session and was eating a popsicle. Cherry red, his lips stained the color of artificial fruit. They say I can't have too much potassium, he told me, but they let me have these, so I'm calling it a win. Small victories matter, I'd replied. That's what my stepdad says. His voice had shifted slightly, a subtle cooling. He's big on platitudes. That was my first hint that the family dynamics were complicated. The second person in this story appeared 6 months ago. His name was Robert Chen, though he wasn't biologically related to Marcus. He was Diane's new husband. They'd been married for 2 years. Robert was 43, worked in IT for a logistics company, had a receding hairline and a gentle smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. He wore wire-rimmed glasses that he was constantly adjusting. He treated Marcus like his own son. He came to every dialysis appointment. He learned to cook low-sodium meals. He researched experimental treatments late into the night. I'd seen him once in the hospital cafeteria, sitting alone at a corner table with his laptop open, surrounded by printed research papers. When I approached, he looked up with tired eyes. "Dr. Reyes, hi. Just trying to understand the latest developments in transplant immunology." "That's pretty advanced reading." "Yeah, well," he gestured at the papers. "When someone you love is dying, you become an expert pretty quickly." But Marcus kept a distance. I'd noticed it in the hospital room, the way Marcus would answer Robert's questions with single words, the way he'd turn slightly away when Robert tried to adjust his pillow or bring him water, the way he'd accept help but never ask for it, as if requesting something from Robert would create a debt he wasn't willing to carry. "He's trying too hard," Marcus had told me once when Robert stepped out to get coffee. We were alone in the dialysis room, the machine humming between us. "I know he means well, but he's not my dad, you know. He seems to care about you a lot. That's the problem." Marcus had looked at me then, and I'd seen something in his eyes. Not anger exactly, but a kind of protective wariness. Everyone who cares eventually leaves, so why get attached? It was the kind of statement that breaks your heart in a specific way, the way only teenage cynicism born from real abandonment can. I'd made a note in his chart, not a medical note, but a mental one. Patient has unresolved attachment issues. Family dynamics may complicate recovery. Marcus's biological father had left when he was 4. No contact, no child support, just gone. Diane had raised Marcus alone for over a decade before meeting Robert through a mutual friend at a work conference. Robert had entered their lives quietly, patiently, never pushing, never demanding to be called dad. He'd shown up to Marcus's basketball games in middle school. He'd helped with homework. He'd been present, consistent, reliable, all the things Marcus's biological father had never been. But teenagers have long memories and high walls, and Marcus's walls were reinforced with the concrete certainty that men who claim to be fathers will eventually disappear. The third time I met Marcus was 2 weeks before the surgery. He'd been admitted for emergency dialysis after a particularly bad episode. His toxin levels had spiked dangerously. He'd been vomiting for hours, his body rejecting the waste it couldn't process. When I entered his room, he looked smaller than I remembered, swallowed by the hospital bed, an IV in each arm. "Hey, Doc," he said weakly. "This is getting old." "I know. I'm scared." His voice was small, younger than 16. "I'm scared I'm gonna die waiting for a kidney that never comes." Diane was in the corner, crying silently into her hands. Robert stood behind her, one hand on her shoulder, his own face drawn with exhaustion and helplessness. "We're going to find you a match," I'd said. It was perhaps the emptiest promise in medicine, the one doctors make when they have nothing else to offer. "We're going to keep fighting." Marcus had nodded, but his eyes said he didn't quite believe me. The morning everything changed. I was reviewing Marcus's latest labs when my pager buzzed. It was from Dr. Sarah Kemper, head of our transplant team. Kemper was in her 50s, with silver hair she wore in a practical bob and a reputation for brilliance that bordered on intimidation. She'd trained at Johns Hopkins, published over 100 papers, and had hands that could move through a human body like a pianist through a sonata. She was also known for her bluntness. She didn't sugarcoat bad news, and she didn't accept mediocrity from her residents. She didn't page residents unless it was important. I took the stairs 2 at a time up to the transplant wing. My heart was hammering, not from exertion, but from anticipation mixed with dread. Pages from Kemper usually meant either an incredible learning opportunity or that something had gone catastrophically wrong. The coordinator's desk was empty, except for a single manila folder sitting under a desk lamp, like something from a film noir movie. The folder had Marcus Chen's name on it. Inside was a donor compatibility report. My hands trembled as I read it. Someone had come forward, someone with a perfect match. The tissue typing was immaculate. 6 out of 6 antigens matched, which was almost unheard of in non-related donors. The blood work was clean. The cross-match was negative. The donor was healthy, willing, and ready. The donor's name was listed at the bottom of the page. Robert Chen, Marcus's stepdad. I had to read it 3 times before the information processed. Robert had been tested. Robert was a match. Robert wanted to donate. And somehow, he'd managed to do all of this without Marcus knowing. I found Dr. Kemper in her office, staring at the same report on her computer screen. She didn't look up when I knocked. "You've seen it," she said. It wasn't a question. "I've seen it," I replied, stepping inside. Her office smelled like Earl Grey tea and old medical journals. There was a photo on her desk of her own daughter, maybe 8 years old, holding a soccer trophy. Another photo showed Kemper receiving some kind of award, shaking hands with someone important. The walls were covered with framed publications, degrees, certifications, a lifetime of achievement documented in expensive frames. Is this real? Robert wants to donate? He's been typed and cleared. His kidney function is excellent. GFR of 98. No proteinuria. No anatomical abnormalities on imaging. He's undergone psychological evaluation. He's passed every screening. Kemper finally looked at me. Her eyes were tired, with the specific exhaustion of someone who's seen too many ethical dilemmas and knows there's no perfect answer to any of them. And he's asking us to keep it anonymous. Anonymous? From Marcus? From Marcus specifically. She leaned back in her chair, which creaked softly. Robert doesn't want Marcus to know the kidney came from him. I felt something cold settle in my chest. That's not standard protocol. No, it's not. But it's not illegal either. Directed anonymous donation is technically possible. We'd list the donor as a family acquaintance in the official records. Marcus would know he received a living donation, but he wouldn't know the specific identity. She pulled off her reading glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. Legally, we're in the clear. Ethically, she gestured vaguely, a motion that encompassed all the ambiguity in the world. Why would Robert want that? Kemper folded her hands on her desk. That's the question, isn't it? I spent the rest of that morning trying to understand. I reviewed Robert's medical history. Unremarkable except for well-controlled hypertension, managed with a low dose of lisinopril. I read through his psych evaluation notes. The psychiatrist had written, "Patient demonstrates clear understanding of risks including surgical complications, chronic kidney disease, life insurance implications, and lifestyle modifications. states his motivation is purely altruistic. When asked about anonymity request, becomes emotional but remains firm. Says, quote, "He already feels like he owes me too much. I don't want him to spend his whole life feeling indebted." Additional note, patient's affect is consistent with genuine concern for recipient's psychological well-being rather than avoidance of responsibility. Recommendation, clear for donation. It was noble. It was heartbreaking. It was also complicated in ways that made my training feel inadequate. Medical school had taught me about organ rejection, immunosuppression protocols, surgical techniques. Nobody had taught me what to do when love expressed itself through secrecy. I needed to talk to someone with more experience. Dr. Miguel Santos was my attending supervisor, a 40-year-old internal medicine physician who'd grown up in the Bronx and still talked like it. He had a thick black beard, perpetually rumpled scrubs, and a gift for cutting through ethical fog with practical wisdom. He was the kind of doctor who remembered every patient's name, who called families personally with test results instead of leaving it to residents, who somehow managed to be both clinically excellent and deeply human. I found him in the residence lounge, eating a sad-looking sandwich from the cafeteria while reviewing chest x-rays on his tablet. The sandwich appeared to be turkey and something that might have once been lettuce. "Santos, I need your brain." He looked up. "My brain is currently devoted to figuring out if this is pneumonia or just really angry lungs. What's up, Reyes?" I sat down and explained the situation. Marcus, Robert, the transplant, the secrecy. I watched Santos's expression shift as he processed the information. Surprise, then concern, then the thoughtful look he got when encountering a problem without an obvious solution. Santos put down his sandwich. "Let me make sure I understand. The stepdad wants to donate a kidney to his stepson, but he doesn't want the kid to know it came from him?" "Exactly. And you're wondering if this is ethically sound. I'm wondering if this is a disaster waiting to happen." Santos was quiet for a moment, chewing thoughtfully. Then he said, "What does the kid think about his stepdad?" "He's distant, polite but guarded. I think he's still processing having a new father figure. He's been through a lot. His biological dad abandoned him, he's been sick for years, he's watching his mom struggle financially and emotionally. Robert represents stability, but also represents change. And teenagers don't always handle change well, especially not teenagers who've learned that attachment leads to abandonment. And if Marcus finds out the truth, that's what I'm afraid of. What if he feels manipulated? What if he feels like Robert did this to force gratitude, to manufacture a bond? What if he feels like every future disagreement is now weighted with, "But you gave me your kidney," and he can never just be a normal teenager? Santos nodded slowly. Or what if he feels like he owes Robert something huge, and that debt crushes him? What if every argument, every teenage rebellion, every moment of normal step-parent-step-kid friction becomes impossible because of this shadow hanging over everything? Exactly. On the other hand, Santos continued, reaching for his coffee, what if Robert's right? What if keeping it anonymous actually frees Marcus to just live? To recover without the psychological weight of knowing whose body part is inside him? What if the gift is actually more pure if it's given without expectation of recognition? I hadn't considered it from that angle. You think the secret could be a kindness? I think secrets are like medication, Reyes. In the right dose, at the right time, they can heal. In the wrong dose, he shrugged, they can poison everything. The question isn't whether the secret is good or bad. The question is, what's the right dose and what's the right timing? That's not very comforting. Medicine rarely is. He took another bite of his sandwich, grimaced. God, this is terrible. Why do I keep buying these? He pushed it aside. Look, here's what I know. Robert is an adult making an informed choice. Marcus is a minor whose life depends on this transplant. If we refuse to honor Robert's wishes, we might lose the donor. If we honor them and it goes wrong, we're complicit in a deception. There's no clean answer here. So what do? We proceed carefully. We document everything. We make sure Diane is on board. We prepare for the possibility that the truth will eventually emerge, and we trust that people are more resilient than we give them credit for. It wasn't the definitive answer I wanted, but it was probably the only honest one available. That afternoon, I met with Diane in the hospital cafeteria. She sat across from me with a cup of tea she wasn't drinking, her hands wrapped around the warm ceramic like she needed something to hold on to. Up close, I could see the toll the last 18 months had taken. The gray in her hair had spread. The lines around her eyes had deepened. Her shoulders had a permanent slump of exhaustion. "Dr. Reyes, I don't know what to do," she said quietly. "Robert told me what he wants. He made me promise not to tell Marcus either. And I love him for it, for wanting to do this, for caring so much. But I also feel like I'm betraying my son by keeping this from him. How do you feel about it? She looked out the window. Outside, the afternoon light was turning golden. Hospital staff walked past in clusters, some in scrubs, some in street clothes, all carrying the weight of other people's suffering. A food service worker pushed a cart loaded with dinner trays. 2 nurses laughed about something, their break clearly providing momentary relief from the intensity inside. I feel like I'm standing between 2 people I love, both of them trying to protect each other, and I don't know who's right. Her voice cracked slightly. Robert is doing this beautiful, selfless thing. He's giving Marcus a chance at a normal life, but he's also putting me in a position where I have to lie to my son. And if Marcus ever finds out we knew and didn't tell him, she paused, blinking back tears. I don't know if he'll forgive us. Have you asked Marcus how he feels about Robert? Not directly, but I see it. The walls, the politeness that's really just distance. She finally looked at me, and I saw the specific pain of a mother who can't fix what's broken in her child. Marcus's father leaving. It broke something in him. He built armor. He decided that if he never lets anyone in, they can never hurt him by leaving. And now Robert is trying so hard to be there for him, to prove he's not going anywhere, but Marcus won't let him in. Maybe he thinks this surgery, this gift, will show Marcus that he's committed, that he's real, that love can be proven through action. Or maybe, I said gently, Robert is afraid that if Marcus knows, it'll push him further away, that Marcus will feel controlled or manipulated or trapped by obligation. Diane closed her eyes. Exactly. She was quiet for a long moment, then added, when I married Robert, I thought I was giving Marcus something he needed. A stable father figure, a complete family. But Marcus saw it as betrayal, like I was trying to replace his dad, even though his dad had already replaced us with complete absence. Teenage logic isn't always logical. No, but his pain is real. And now we're asking him to accept a kidney from a donor he doesn't know, when the donor is actually the person he's been pushing away for 2 years. She laughed bitterly. It's either the most beautiful thing ever, or the most catastrophic. And I won't know which until it's too late to change course. We sat in silence for a moment. Around us, the cafeteria hummed with ordinary hospital life. Nurses gossiping about weekend plans, medical students cramming for exams, families eating overpriced sandwiches while waiting for news about their loved ones. The normalcy of it felt surreal against the weight of the decision we were discussing. What do we do? Diane whispered. I wanted to have an answer. I wanted to be wise beyond my years, to channel some perfect medical ethicist who could solve this with a clean, clear principle. But all I had was my own uncertainty and the memory of my mother's hands on my face, telling me I would help people. I wasn't sure this counted as helping. We proceed with the transplant, I said finally, because Marcus needs it. And then, we trust that the truth has a way of finding its own time. Diane nodded, but she didn't look convinced. Neither was I. The surgery was scheduled for 4 days later. The pre-op process began immediately. Robert underwent final medical clearances, more blood work, a final imaging study to confirm anatomy, meetings with the anesthesiologist. Marcus underwent preparation, including conversations with the transplant team about what to expect post-surgery, immunosuppressant medications, lifestyle changes, the reality that he'd be on anti-rejection drugs for the rest of his life. I was assigned to Marcus's care team, which meant I'd be monitoring him through recovery. It also meant I'd be one of the people who knew the truth while looking him in the eye and maintaining the fiction. It felt wrong. It felt necessary. It felt like being a doctor meant holding contradictions in both hands and learning to live with the weight. The night before surgery, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my apartment, a small studio 15 minutes from the hospital, furnished with secondhand IKEA and medical textbooks stacked on every surface, and stared at the ceiling fan spinning lazy circles in the darkness. My apartment had the particular emptiness of a space belonging to someone who's never there. A futon that served as both couch and bed, a desk covered in papers, a kitchen I rarely used because I ate most meals at the hospital. Through the thin walls, I could hear my neighbor's television, some late-night show with canned laughter. Outside, traffic hummed on the street below. The city never really slept, and neither apparently did I. My phone buzzed. A text from Santos. You awake? Yeah, I typed back. Good. Me too. Want to grab coffee and overthink this together? 20 minutes later, we were sitting in an all-night diner 3 blocks from St. Halstead. The place was mostly empty. Just us, a couple of truckers eating eggs at the counter, and a waitress who looked like she'd seen every possible version of human exhaustion and had achieved some kind of Zen acceptance about it. The diner had the specific aesthetic of a place that hadn't changed since 1987. Vinyl booths with duct-taped tiers, formica tables, a jukebox that probably didn't work, and a rotating pie case near the register. Santos ordered pie, apple, with ice cream. I ordered coffee that tasted like it had been brewed during the previous administration. "Tell me what you're really worried about," Santos said, attacking his pie with the dedication of a man who'd learned to find comfort in small pleasures during long shifts. "I'm worried we're participating in a lie that's going to explode." "Okay, let's game it out. Scenario 1, Marcus never finds out. Robert donates anonymously. Surgery is successful. Marcus recovers, goes to college, lives a full life. Robert gets to watch him grow up knowing he made it possible, but he doesn't get the credit or the recognition. Is that a bad outcome? I considered it. No, that's a good outcome. Robert gets what he wants. Marcus being healthy and free. Marcus gets what he needs, a functioning kidney and a chance at life. Nobody's hurt. Scenario 2. Marcus finds out eventually. Maybe months later, maybe years later. He's upset at first, feels betrayed maybe, angry at the deception. But then he processes it, realizes the depth of Robert's love. They have a difficult but ultimately healing conversation. Their relationship deepens because of the honesty, even if it comes late. Also, not a terrible outcome, right? Right. Scenario 3. Marcus finds out immediately, feels manipulated and controlled, rejects Robert, damages his relationship with his mother, and spends years in therapy processing the trauma of feeling like his body autonomy was violated. Santos took a bite of pie, ice cream melting into the crust. That's the nightmare scenario. That's the one I can't stop thinking about. Of course it is. Because you're a good doctor, Reyes. You're thinking about worst-case scenarios. That's what we're trained to do. Imagine everything that could go wrong and try to prevent it. But here's what I've learned in 15 years of medicine. You can't always prevent pain. Sometimes the best you can do is minimize harm and trust people to find their own healing. I wrapped my hands around my coffee cup. The ceramic was warm, comforting. What would you do? If you were in my position, what would you do? Santos was quiet for a long moment, fork hovering over his pie. Then he said, I document everything. Every conversation with Robert about his wishes, every psychological evaluation, every informed consent form, every discussion with Diane about her role in maintaining confidentiality. I'd make sure that if this ever comes to light, in a lawsuit, in an ethics review, in family therapy 20 years from now, there's a clear paper trail showing that we followed protocol, that we prioritized the patient's medical needs, and that we respected the donor's autonomy. And then I'd pray that love is stronger than secrets. That's not very scientific. Medicine isn't always scientific, kid. Sometimes it's just human. He finished his pie, set down his fork. You know what the real kicker is? We'll probably never know if we made the right choice. Robert might take this to his grave. Marcus might live his whole life never knowing. And we'll just have to live with the uncertainty. How do you live with that? You accept that medicine is as much art as science. That sometimes you're working with incomplete information and competing values. That your job isn't to be perfect. It's to be thoughtful, careful, and willing to sit with discomfort. He smiled slightly. Also, pie helps. We finished our coffee in comfortable silence. Outside, the city was starting to wake up. Streetlights flickered off one by one. Delivery trucks rumbled past. A sanitation truck worked its way down the street, hydraulic arms lifting dumpsters. Somewhere, people were beginning their days, unaware that in a few hours, two people in an operating room would be connected by an act of love so profound, it required silence to protect it. You ready for this? Santos asked as we stood to leave. No, but I don't think there's a way to be ready. That's probably the most honest thing anyone said about this case. The morning of surgery arrived with clinical precision. I got to the hospital at 5:30 a.m., even earlier than usual. The pre-dawn darkness had a specific quality. Cold, silent, heavy with anticipation. The parking lot was nearly empty except for the night shift's cars and a few early arrivals like me. Robert was prepped in one surgical bay, Marcus in another. I scrubbed in to observe. Residents don't perform transplants, but we assist and learn. The scrubbing process was meditative. 3 minutes of methodical washing, water running hot, the antiseptic soap turning skin red and raw. Doctor. Kemper moved through pre-op with calm efficiency. I watched her check Robert's vitals, review his consent forms one final time, explain what would happen when he woke up. She had this way of being simultaneously warm and professional, like she cared deeply while maintaining appropriate boundaries. You'll be in recovery for several hours, she told him. Pain management will be aggressive. We'll use a patient-controlled analgesia pump so you can dose yourself within safe limits. You'll have restrictions on lifting and movement for 6 weeks. Your remaining kidney will compensate over time, but you'll need regular monitoring for the rest of your life. Annual blood work, blood pressure checks, screening for proteinuria. Robert nodded. He looked small in the hospital gown, IV lines trailing from his arms like tethers to this moment. And Marcus? We'll be in the next operating room. We'll remove your kidney first, preserve it in University of Wisconsin solution, then transplant it immediately. The surgery takes approximately 4 to 6 hours total. Will I be able to see him? After? Not immediately. You'll both need recovery time. But yes, within 48 hours, assuming both surgeries go well and there are no complications, you'll be able to visit. Robert's jaw tightened. And he won't know? We'll list you as a family acquaintance donor. The transplant team will maintain appropriate confidentiality. Your wish will be respected. Kemper paused. Mr. Chen, are you certain this is what you want? I'm certain, Robert said quietly. He deserves to feel free. I saw something pass across Kemper's face then, recognition maybe of the specific sacrifice Robert was making. Not just the kidney, but the credit, the gratitude, the acknowledgement of love. In the other bay, Marcus was trying to joke with the nurses. His mother sat beside him holding his hand. I could see the fear beneath her smile, the way her fingers trembled slightly, the way she kept glancing at the clock on the wall. How you feeling, Marcus? I asked, checking his IV placement. Like I'm about to get a major upgrade, he said, but his voice was thin. New kidney, new me, right? Something like that. Dr. Reyes? He looked at me directly. What if it doesn't work? The question hung in the air. Around us, machines beeped softly. The anesthesiologist was preparing medication. We were minutes away from rolling him into surgery. The success rate for living donor transplants is very high, I said. Over 95% at 1 year. Your body is young and strong. You're in the best possible position for this to go well. But there's still that 5%. I sat down on the edge of his bed. This wasn't textbook behavior. Attendings would tell you to maintain professional distance. But sometimes textbooks don't account for 16-year-old kids who've spent 18 months attached to machines, wondering if they'll live to see 17. There's always uncertainty, I said honestly. In medicine, in life. But here's what I know. You have an entire team of people who've dedicated their lives to making sure this works. You have a donor who's a perfect match. You have your mom, who hasn't left your side. And you have something inside you, I've seen it, that's stubborn and strong and refuses to quit. Marcus's eyes were wet. What if I can't be the person everyone wants me to be? What if I get this kidney and I'm still just me? Marcus, you're already you. The kidney doesn't change that. It just gives you more time to figure out who you is. Diane squeezed his hand. We love you exactly as you are. The anesthesiologist stepped forward. Ready, Marcus? He took a deep breath, nodded. Let's do this. They wheeled him toward the operating room. I walked alongside, my hand on the gurney rail. As we approached the double doors, Marcus looked up at me one more time. Hey, Dr. Reyes, tell the donor, whoever they are, tell them thank you. Tell them I'm gonna make it count. I will, I promised. The doors swung shut behind him. I stood outside the OR for a moment, gathering myself. Then I went to the observation deck, a small room with windows overlooking both surgical bays. From here, I could watch both procedures simultaneously. In Bay 1, Dr. Kemper's team was beginning Robert's nephrectomy. The incision was made with careful precision, a flank incision, retroperitoneal approach. Retractors held tissue aside. Suction cleared the field. The kidney was healthy, pink, perfect. They worked with practiced efficiency, every movement economical, every cut intentional. I watched Kemper's hands move with absolute confidence, the kind that comes from hundreds of similar procedures. In Bay 2, Marcus's surgical team was preparing the recipient site. His diseased kidney would remain in place. We rarely remove native kidneys unless they're causing complications. The new kidney would be placed in his lower abdomen, in the iliac fossa, attached to blood vessels in his leg. I watched both rooms. 2 bodies opened, 2 lives intertwined, 2 families bound by a gift one of them would never know about. The kidney was removed from Robert at 9:47 a.m. It was immediately placed in preservation solution, cold, clear, oxygenated, and carried carefully across the hall to Bay 2. I watched it cross the threshold. this small, bean-shaped organ that represented everything Robert couldn't say out loud, everything he felt but couldn't express, every moment of wanting to be Marcus's father, but being held at arm's length. The transplant procedure was meticulous. Dr. Kemper connected the renal artery first, suturing it to the external iliac artery with tiny, precise stitches, then the renal vein to the external iliac vein. Finally, the ureter to the bladder. Each anastomosis was checked and rechecked. The room was silent except for the beeping of monitors and the quiet instructions Kemper gave to her team. At 11:23 a.m., they unclamped the blood vessels. Everyone held their breath. The kidney pinked up immediately. Healthy color flooded through it. Within seconds, urine began to flow, a sign the organ was functioning immediately, which was the best possible outcome. "There it is," Kemper said quietly. "Beautiful." In the observation deck, I realized I was crying. Not obvious tears, just a wetness in my eyes that I wiped away quickly. But Santos, standing beside me, noticed. He didn't say anything. He just put a hand on my shoulder. We watched them close. We watched them transfer Marcus to recovery. We watched them move Robert to his own room. 2 surgeries, 1 sacrifice, a secret that would shape a family for years to come. And I was one of the only people who knew the truth. Recovery was complicated, not medically. Both surgeries were textbook perfect. Marcus's new kidney functioned immediately, his creatinine levels dropping from 8.4 to 2.1 within 48 hours, then to 1.3 by day 5. Robert's remaining kidney compensated beautifully, his labs showing excellent adaptation with a GFR of 67, lower than before, but well within acceptable range for a single kidney. But emotionally, psychologically, the landscape was treacherous. Marcus was moved to the transplant recovery wing on the 5th floor. His room had large windows overlooking the parking lot, and beyond that, the city skyline. Diane stayed with him constantly, sleeping in the recliner beside his bed, eating meals from the cafeteria when Marcus was asleep. Robert remained on the 4th floor, officially recovering from an unrelated, minor surgical procedure for hernia repair, a cover story we'd arranged. The deception required careful choreography. When Diane visited Robert, she told Marcus she was going to the cafeteria or making phone calls. When Robert's room service trays came, they were marked with a different patient name. The nursing staff on both floors were briefed about the confidentiality requirements, though I could see the discomfort on some of their faces. Marcus asked about the donor constantly. "Do you know who they are?" he'd ask me during post-op rounds. "A family acquaintance," I'd reply, sticking to the script. "Someone who was a compatible match and wanted to help." "Can I meet them?" "That's up to the donor. Some donors prefer to remain anonymous." "That's weird," Marcus said. "If someone gave me their kidney, I'd want them to know how grateful I am. Like, this is huge. This is my whole life. How can I not thank them?" Each conversation felt like walking through a minefield, carefully placing each word to avoid triggering an explosion. On the 2nd day post-op, Marcus's room was filled with flowers and balloons from his school friends. Get-well cards covered the windowsill. His phone buzzed constantly with texts and social media messages. The outpouring of love seemed to lift his spirits, but I noticed he kept looking at the door as if waiting for someone specific. "Has Robert texted you?" Diane asked him that afternoon, trying to sound casual. "Yeah, a couple times. He says he's busy with work stuff." Marcus frowned at his phone. "But that doesn't really make sense. He took time off for this. Why wouldn't he be here?" "Everyone handles medical situations differently, honey." "Mom, stop. Something's off. Robert has been to every appointment for the past year and a half, every single one. And now, when I'm actually getting better, he's just gone?" On the 3rd day post-op, Marcus was sitting up in bed, looking through his phone. His color was better. The circles under his eyes were fading. He looked like a teenager again instead of someone carrying mortality on their shoulders. But there was a new tension in his jaw, a suspicion in his eyes. "Hey, Dr. Reyes," he called when I entered for evening rounds. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. Where's Robert?" I checked his incision site, buying time. The wound looked perfect, clean, no signs of infection, healing well. "What do you mean?" "He hasn't visited me yet. He was here for every dialysis session, every appointment, every bad lab result. And now, when I'm actually getting better, he's just gone." "He's not gone," I said carefully. "He's been giving you and your mom space to focus on recovery." "That doesn't sound like him." Marcus's eyes were sharp, intelligent. I'd underestimated how perceptive he was. "Something's weird. The timing's weird. Did something happen? Is he okay?" "He's fine," I said, which was technically true. "Then why won't he visit me?" Diane walked in then, carrying coffee and looking exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes, her hair escaping from her bun in messy strands. "Hey, sweetheart, how are you feeling?" "I'm fine." "Where's Robert?" Diane's face did something complicated, a micro-expression of guilt and love and fear that lasted maybe half a second but told the whole story if you knew what to look for. "He's dealing with something at work. He'll visit soon." "Mom, that's bullshit. Work doesn't keep someone from visiting the hospital for 3 days. What's going on?" "Marcus, don't use that language." "Mom," his voice was firm, adult. "Tell me the truth. Did you guys break up? Is that why he's not here? Because if you broke up, just tell me. Don't make it into some big mystery." "What?" "No. Honey, no. Robert loves you. He loves both of us. We're not breaking up." "Then where is he?" The room was silent except for the soft beeping of monitors. I saw Diane's resolve cracking. She looked at me desperate, asking with her eyes what she should do. Her hands were shaking slightly. I stepped in. "Marcus, recovery is complicated for everyone. Your mom has been here nonstop. Robert is giving her support in other ways, handling things at home, taking care of logistics, making sure everything's ready for when you go home. Everyone processes major medical events differently. It wasn't a lie. It also wasn't the truth. The kind of technically accurate statement that doctors become expert at delivering." Marcus studied my face, then his mother's, and I saw him decide to let it go, for now. "Fine, but I want to see him soon. I need to see him." "You will," Diane promised, her voice breaking slightly. That night, I found Robert in his hospital room. He was sitting in the dark, staring out the window at the city lights. His own incision was healing well, but he moved gingerly, like someone carrying pain they're trying to hide. "How is he?" Robert asked without turning around. "Medically? Excellent. The kidney is functioning perfectly. His energy is coming back. He's eating normally. All his labs are trending in the right direction. And emotionally? He's asking about you. A lot." Robert's shoulders tensed. "What are you telling him?" "The truth. That you're recovering from a different procedure. That you're giving the family space. That you're supporting them in other ways." "Does he believe it?" "For now." I sat down in the chair beside his bed. "Robert, can I ask you something? Not as a doctor, just as someone trying to understand. Why is it so important that he never knows?" Robert was quiet for a long time. Outside, the night was clear. Stars were visible beyond the city lights. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, then faded. An ambulance, probably, bringing someone else's emergency to St. Halstead's doors. "When I married Diane, Marcus was 14, Robert finally said. Old enough to remember his biological father. Old enough to have built walls. I knew I was walking into a situation where I might never be fully accepted, and I made peace with that. I told myself that love doesn't require recognition. It just requires showing up." He turned to look at me. In the dim light from the hallway, his face was haggard, older than his 43 years. But then Marcus got sick, really sick, and I watched Diane try to be strong while falling apart inside. I watched Marcus become a shadow of himself, this bright, funny kid turning gray and tired. I saw him miss school, lose friendships, give up basketball. I watched life drain out of him 3 times a week on that dialysis machine. And I realized that loving someone means doing whatever it takes to keep them alive, even if they never know you did it. But Marcus wants to thank the donor. He wants to express gratitude. And if he knows it's me, that gratitude will become obligation. Every time he wants to be a normal teenager, to rebel, to make mistakes, to push boundaries the way all teenagers need to, he'll remember that I gave him part of my body. He'll feel trapped by debt. And I don't want that for him. I want him to be free to grow up, to be angry at me when he needs to be, to establish independence without the weight of owing me his life. I understood the logic. I even respected it. But something about it still felt incomplete, like a puzzle with a piece missing. "Robert, what if the debt isn't the problem? What if the problem is that Marcus has never let himself believe you're not going to leave?" He blinked. "What do you mean?" "His biological father abandoned him. That's his model of what fathers do. They leave. They disappear. They choose themselves over their children. So he's protecting himself from you by not letting you in, by maintaining distance, by refusing to call you dad or accept your love fully. But what if knowing about the kidney, knowing that you literally gave him part of yourself, what if that's the proof he needs that you're permanent, that you're not going anywhere?" Robert's expression crumbled. "What if it's not enough? What if he still can't accept me? What if I do this huge thing and it still doesn't change anything?" Then at least you'll know you tried to reach him with the truth instead of hiding behind silence. It was harsh, maybe too harsh. But sometimes honesty is the only medicine that works. Robert put his face in his hands. His shoulders shook. I waited, letting him process, letting him feel whatever he needed to feel. In the hallway outside, a nurse pushed a medication cart past. Soft voices murmured. The hospital's nighttime rhythm continued around us. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red. I'm terrified of losing him, Dr. Reyes. Even though he's not mine to lose. Even though he's never fully been mine at all. That's what love is, I said quietly, being terrified and showing up anyway. The decision came 4 days later, and it didn't come from Robert or Diane or even from me. It came from Marcus. I was doing evening rounds when I found him sitting on the edge of his bed, fully dressed in street clothes, jeans, a t-shirt, sneakers. His discharge papers were in his hand. Diane was helping him pack his belongings. The books he'd brought, the phone chargers, the stuffed lion he'd had since childhood that he claimed he only kept for sentimental reasons. But that clearly meant more to him than he'd admit. Looking good, Marcus, I said. Ready to go home? Actually, I need to see someone first. Oh? Who? The donor. His voice was calm but determined. I know you said they want to remain anonymous, but I've been thinking about it, and I can't leave this hospital without at least trying to say thank you. It's not right. Diane froze, a book halfway into his bag. I saw panic flash across her face. Marcus, we discussed this. I know what we discussed, Mom, but it's not okay. Someone gave me a piece of their body. Someone is walking around with one kidney because of me. Someone made a choice that literally saved my life, and I don't even know their name. He looked at me. Dr. Reyes, I know you know who it is. I'm not stupid. The way you and Mom keep looking at each other, the way everyone gets weird when I ask questions, the way information keeps getting dodged. Someone in this hospital is my donor, and I need to know who. I stood very still. This was the moment, the inflection point. I could maintain the fiction. I could cite hospital policy and patient confidentiality. I could protect the secret that Robert and Diane had asked me to keep. Or I could trust that sometimes the truth, even when it's complicated and messy and potentially painful, is the only path to real healing. Marcus, I said carefully, if I told you who the donor was, and it wasn't who you expected, would you be ready for that? He frowned. What does that mean? It means that sometimes the people who love us show up in ways we don't recognize. And sometimes the gift isn't just the organ, it's the reason behind it, the motivation, the depth of feeling that makes someone willing to sacrifice their body for yours. Dr. Reyes, you're talking in riddles. I'm talking in truths that are hard to hear. I looked at Diane. She was crying silently, tears streaming down her face, her hand pressed against her mouth. Your mom knows who the donor is, and I think it's time she told you. Diane's face went white. Noah, I can't. Yes, you can, because the secret is hurting all of you, and the only way out is through. Marcus looked between us, confusion and dawning realization mixing on his face. Mom? What's he talking about? Diane sat down heavily on the bed. She was trembling, her whole body shaking like someone standing in cold wind. Marcus, honey, the donor, the person who gave you the kidney. Who? She closed her eyes, took a breath. When she opened them again, they were full of love and fear and desperate hope. It was Robert. The room went silent. Marcus stared at his mother, then at me, then back at his mother. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. What? Robert was a perfect match. He went through all the testing secretly over the course of 6 weeks. He donated his kidney to you, and he didn't want you to know because... Diane's voice broke. Because he didn't want you to feel obligated to love him. He just wanted you to live. He wanted you to be free. I watched Marcus's face cycle through emotions. Confusion, disbelief, shock, and then something deeper. Something that looked like a wall cracking from the inside, like foundations shifting, like the earth opening up to reveal something that had always been there but hidden. Where is he? Marcus whispered. 4th floor, I said. Room 427. Marcus stood up. His movements were careful. He was still healing, still fragile, his body adjusting to the immunosuppressants and the new organ. But there was determination in every step, a purpose that transcended physical limitation. I need to see him, now. Diane and I exchanged glances. Then we followed him out of the room, into the hallway, toward the elevator. The hospital was quiet at this hour, the evening shift settling in, dinner trays being collected, families preparing for visiting hours to end. The fluorescent light seemed brighter than usual, or maybe I was just hyper-aware of every detail, knowing this moment would reshape everything. We rode the elevator down one floor in complete silence. I could hear Marcus breathing, fast, shallow, processing. I could hear Diane's quiet sniffles as she tried to compose herself. The elevator dinged softly at each floor. When we reached room 427, the door was partially open. Inside, Robert was sitting in the chair by the window, reading a book. Some mystery novel. I could see the cover from the doorway. He looked up when we entered, and when he saw Marcus, the book slipped from his hands and clattered to the floor. "Marcus, is it true?" Marcus's voice was steady, but his eyes were wet, red-rimmed. "Did you give me your kidney?" Robert stood slowly, favoring his left side where the incision was. His own eyes filled. "Yes." "Why?" "Because you needed it. Because I could. Because I love you. But you didn't want me to know? I didn't want you to feel trapped. I didn't want you to think you owed me something. I didn't want every moment of your teenage years to be shadowed by feeling indebted to me. I just wanted you to be healthy and free and able to live your life without..." Marcus crossed the room in 3 quick steps and wrapped his arms around Robert. The movement was sudden, fierce, desperate. Robert gasped, partly from the pressure on his healing incision, partly from shock. "You idiot," Marcus said, his voice muffled against Robert's shoulder. "You complete idiot." Robert's arms came up slowly, carefully, like he was afraid Marcus might disappear if he held too tight, or that this might be a dream he'd wake from. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have told you." "No." Marcus pulled back, looking Robert in the face, tears streaming down his cheeks. "You should have told me you wanted to be my dad. You should have told me that before any of this. Because I've been waiting for you to give up on me. I've been waiting for you to leave like he did. I've been waiting for the moment when you realize I'm too much work, too damaged, too angry. And instead, you gave me part of yourself. You literally gave me part of your body so I could live. Of course I did. Marcus, you're my son. Not biologically, not legally, but in every way that matters. And I would give you both kidneys if I could. I would give you everything. I would die for you if that's what it took." They were both crying now. Diane was crying. I was doing my absolute best not to cry and failing miserably, wiping at my eyes with my sleeve. "Can I call you Dad?" Marcus asked quietly, like a child asking permission for something precious. "Like, for real? Not Stepdad. Just Dad?" Robert's face transformed, every line of worry and fear dissolving into pure joy. "You can call me anything you want, but yes, God, yes, please." They held each other in that hospital room, 2 people connected by choice and sacrifice and love that had finally found its words. Diane joined them, wrapping her arms around both of them, and for a moment, they were a complete unit. A family forged not by blood alone, but by the decision to keep showing up, to keep loving even when love wasn't immediately returned, to keep hoping even when hope seemed foolish. I slipped out quietly, leaving them to their moment. In the hallway, I leaned against the wall and let out a long breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Santos appeared beside me, apparently finishing his own rounds. He took one look at my face and smiled. That knowing smile of someone who'd seen this movie before and knew how it ended. "The secret's out?" "The secret's out." "How'd it go?" "Exactly how it needed to." We stood there in comfortable silence. 2 doctors who'd learned that sometimes medicine isn't about protocols and procedures. Sometimes it's about creating space for people to find their way to each other. Sometimes it's about knowing when to hold secrets and when to let them go. Sometimes it's about trusting that love, real love, is strong enough to survive truth. "You did good, kid," Santos said, clapping me on the shoulder. "I didn't do anything. They did it themselves. You held the space. That's not nothing." Marcus was discharged the next day. His recovery continued at home, with regular follow-ups at the transplant clinic every 2 weeks for the first 3 months. His immunosuppressant medications required careful monitoring, tacrolimus levels checked weekly, watching for rejection, watching for infection. His kidney function tests came back perfect week after week, creatinine steady at 1.1, GFR climbing to 85. Within 2 months, he'd gained back the 20 pounds he'd lost during the dialysis months. His color was better. His energy was back. He looked alive again. Robert's recovery was equally smooth. His remaining kidney adapted beautifully, compensating for the loss with increased function. His incision healed without complication. His GFR stabilized at 65, which was excellent for a single kidney. And most importantly, The distance between him and Marcus dissolved like morning fog under sunlight. I saw them in the clinic regularly over the next several months. Each visit, I watched their relationship deepen. Marcus started calling Robert Dad consistently, naturally, without self-consciousness. They developed inside jokes. They argued about normal teenage things, curfews and grades and whose turn it was to take out the trash, without the shadow of abandonment hanging over every disagreement. "It's weird," Marcus told me during a 3-month follow-up appointment. He was sitting on the exam table, swinging his legs, looking healthier than I'd ever seen him. I spent so long thinking that if I let myself love him, it would hurt worse when he left. But now I realize he was never going to leave. And the kidney? It's not why I love him. It's just proof of what was always true. Robert, sitting beside him in the visitor chair, looked like he might cry again. "You're going to make your old man emotional in front of Dr. Reyes. You gave me a kidney. I think crying is allowed." Fair point. 3 months became 6. 6 months became a year. I followed Marcus's case closely, not just because I was part of his care team, but because his story had become woven into my own understanding of what it means to be a doctor. Medical school teaches you anatomy, pharmacology, pathophysiology. It teaches you how to diagnose and treat, but it doesn't teach you how to hold secrets that could hurt or heal. It doesn't teach you how to navigate the space between patient autonomy and family complexity. It doesn't teach you that sometimes the most important medicine is truth, delivered at exactly the right moment. 1 year post-transplant, I ran into the Chen family in the hospital cafeteria. They weren't there for an appointment. They were visiting another transplant patient, a young woman named Sarah who was waiting for a liver and feeling hopeless. "We told her our story," Diane explained, stirring sugar into her coffee. She looked different than she had a year ago. Lighter, younger somehow. The worry lines had softened. About how close we came to losing Marcus. About Robert's gift. About how sometimes miracles come from the people right beside you. "How'd she respond?" I asked. Marcus grinned, biting into a sandwich. "She cried. Then she called her brother and asked him to get tested. They're going through the evaluation process now. She said something beautiful," Robert added, adjusting his glasses. "She said, 'I've been looking for a stranger to save me, but maybe I should have been looking at my family.' That encounter stayed with me. Because isn't that the truth of it? We spend so much time looking for salvation from outside sources, from strangers, from institutions, from medicine itself, that we forget the people who've been trying to save us all along." A few weeks later, I was called into Dr. Kemper's office. I knocked, expecting a case review or a procedural question. Instead, she gestured for me to sit and pulled up a document on her screen. "Dr. Reyes, I wanted to discuss the Chen case with you." My stomach tightened. "Is there a problem?" "The opposite. I've been asked to present at a national transplant surgery conference about ethical considerations in living donation, the American Society of Transplant Surgeons annual meeting in Chicago. I'd like to include your perspective on the Chen case, specifically your role in managing the anonymity request and the eventual disclosure." "My perspective? I'm just a resident?" "You're a resident who understood that medicine isn't just about following protocols. It's about understanding people. What you did, recognizing that the secret was causing harm, facilitating the truth-telling at the right moment, supporting the family through a complex ethical situation, that was good doctoring. Not by the book, maybe, but good." I felt warmth spread through my chest, something that felt like validation or recognition or maybe just relief that I hadn't completely screwed everything up. "Thank you, Dr. Kemper. I'm writing a paper on it. I'd like you to co-author. We'd examine the ethics of anonymous living donation, the psychological impact of disclosure timing, and the role of medical teams in family communication. Interested? My first research paper, my name on a publication, a contribution to medical literature." I tried to play it cool. "Yes, definitely yes." She smiled, a rare warmth breaking through her professional demeanor. "Good. Now get back to work. You have rounds in 15 minutes. I left her office walking on air, feeling like maybe I was actually becoming the kind of doctor I'd always hoped to be. The hospital cafeteria at 2 a.m. has a specific feeling. The fluorescent lights are dimmer, switched to night mode. The coffee is older, sitting in carafes since the evening shift started. The handful of people present are either extremely awake or dangerously tired. Santos and I had fallen into the habit of meeting there after particularly long shifts, debriefing over terrible food and mediocre coffee. "I heard about the co-author opportunity," Santos said, stealing a fry from my plate. "Congratulations." "Thanks." Still feels surreal. You earned it. The Chen case was a masterclass in ethical complexity. Kemper doesn't offer co-authorship lightly. I still wonder if we did the right thing. Keeping the secret initially, I mean. Santos shrugged, chewing his stolen fry. Medicine isn't about always being right from the start. It's about being thoughtful, careful, and willing to adjust when new information emerges. You did that, the family did that, and everyone's better for it. But what if Marcus had never asked? What if he'd never pushed for the truth? Then maybe the secret would have stayed buried. Or maybe it would have come out in a different way, at a different time. You can't control all variables, Reyes. You can only do your best with the information you have in the moment. He paused, reaching for his own coffee. Besides, I think the secret was always going to come out. Love like Robert's? It's too big to hide forever. It demands to be known. I thought about that. About love as a force that insists on being seen, even when people try to contain it. About how the human heart has a way of breaking through barriers, even ones built with good intentions. How's Marcus doing now? Santos asked. Amazing. His kidney function is perfect. He's back in school full-time. He made the varsity soccer team. Coach says he's one of their strongest players. His mom says he's thriving. He's even talking about applying to college for pre-med. Following in your footsteps? I guess. He says he wants to help people the way we helped him. Santos smiled. That's the best compliment a doctor can get. 2 years after the transplant, I received an invitation in the mail. It was handwritten on thick cardstock, the kind of invitation people send for important events. The return address was the Chen family's home. You are invited to celebrate Marcus Chen's high school graduation Saturday, June 15th, 2 p.m. Please join us as we honor his achievement and new beginning. I almost cried reading it. I held the card in my hands, feeling the weight of the paper, the care that had gone into choosing it and addressing it and sending it to me. I wasn't family. I wasn't a close friend, but I'd been part of Marcus's journey and they'd remembered. The graduation ceremony was held outdoors on a perfect June afternoon. The sky was impossibly blue, cloudless, the kind of day that feels specifically designed for celebration. White chairs were arranged in rows on the football field. Families clustered together, holding balloons and homemade signs. The air smelled like sunscreen and fresh-cut grass and possibility. I sat near the back, wanting to observe more than participate. The field was packed with people, hundreds of families, proud and loud and full of joy. The graduating class was large, maybe 200 students, all in green gowns and mortarboards. When Marcus's name was called, he walked across the stage with confidence, his green gown billowing slightly in the breeze. Robert and Diane stood together in the family section, cheering louder than anyone else, Robert's arm around Diane's shoulders. They looked happy, complete, like a family that had fought through darkness and found light on the other side. After the ceremony, I found them near the refreshment table, surrounded by Marcus's friends and extended family members. Marcus saw me first, his face lighting up. "Dr. Reyes, you came! Wouldn't miss it. Congratulations, Marcus." He grinned, and in that moment, I saw the difference 2 years made. The gray pallor was gone. The exhaustion had vanished. The shadows under his eyes had disappeared. He looked like exactly what he was, an 18-year-old on the verge of everything, healthy and strong and full of future. "I got into UC Berkeley," he said proudly, showing me his phone with the acceptance email still saved. "Pre-med." My eyes widened. "Pre-med? Really?" "Yeah. I figure someone should probably learn how to do what you guys did for me. How to save lives and keep families together. How to know when to speak and when to listen. How to be present in people's hardest moments." Robert stepped forward, shaking my hand. His grip was firm, warm. "Dr. Reyes, thank you. For everything. For the medical care, obviously, but also for helping us find our way to each other. For knowing when it was time to stop protecting the secret and start protecting the truth. You found your own way," I said. "I just held the door open." Diane hugged me and I could smell her perfume. Something floral and expensive, the kind of thing you wear when you're celebrating something important. "You did more than that. You saw what we needed before we knew we needed it. You gave us permission to be honest when we were too scared to do it ourselves." We stood together in the afternoon sunshine, surrounded by the noise of celebration. Hundreds of graduates and their families marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. But for me, this moment represented something else. It represented proof that sometimes, when we're brave enough to trust people with the truth, even complicated truths, they rise to meet it. Marcus would go to Berkeley. He'd study medicine. He'd probably have his own patients one day, his own ethical dilemmas, his own moments of wondering if he was doing the right thing. And maybe, if he was lucky, he'd remember that medicine isn't just science. It's also art, intuition, and the willingness to hold space for people to become their best selves. As I drove home that evening, the sun setting over the city skyline in bands of orange and purple, I thought about all the things medical school never taught me. How to recognize when a secret has become a prison, how to facilitate truth-telling without causing harm, how to trust that families, even broken ones, have an incredible capacity to heal if given the chance. I thought about Robert, who'd loved Marcus enough to give him a kidney, and then loved him even more by almost letting him never know. I thought about Diane, caught between two people she loved, trying to honor both their needs. And I thought about Marcus, who'd built walls to protect himself, but had the courage to let them fall when he realized someone was willing to stay. My phone buzzed. A text from Santos. Heard Marcus graduated. How was it? Beautiful, I typed back. Everything turned out okay. Because of you, he replied. I smiled. Typed, because of all of us. Because people are stronger than we give them credit for. That's what I like about you, Reyes. You still have hope. Is that a bad thing? In this job, it's the only thing that matters. I parked in my apartment complex and sat in the car for a moment, watching the last light fade from the sky. Inside, my apartment was still small and cluttered with medical journals and textbooks, evidence of a life dedicated to learning how to heal. But healing, I'd learned, wasn't just about medications and procedures. It was about understanding when to speak and when to listen, when to protect and when to reveal, when to follow the rules and when to trust your instinct that people deserve the truth. The Chen family taught me that. They taught me that love sometimes looks like sacrifice, that secrets can be both shields and prisons, that teenagers are more resilient than we think, that stepdads can be heroes without needing credit, that mothers carry impossible weights with grace, and that sometimes the best medicine is simply creating space for people to find their way to each other. I went inside and made dinner. Pasta with vegetables, nothing fancy, the kind of simple meal that tastes better when you're tired. While it cooked, I opened my laptop and started writing notes for the research paper with Dr. Kemper. The title we'd settled on was Ethical Considerations in Anonymous Living Donation, a case study in family complexity and disclosure timing. It was dry and academic, the way medical papers need to be. But underneath the clinical language, what we were really writing about was this. Love makes people do extraordinary things. And sometimes, the most extraordinary thing is trusting someone else enough to be vulnerable with them. The pasta timer beeped. I served myself a bowl, sat at my small kitchen table, and looked out the window at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the darkness. Somewhere in those lights was St. Halstead Hospital, where right now residents were starting night shifts, patients were healing, families were holding vigil. The great machinery of medicine was turning, as it always did, trying to push back against suffering and death. And in a house across town, the Chen family was probably having dinner together. Marcus might be telling stories about his graduation day, about his friends' plans for summer, about his excitement for Berkeley. Robert might be making dad jokes that made Marcus groan but secretly smile. Diane might be taking pictures and posting them to social media with captions about how proud she was, about how far they'd come, about gratitude for second chances. They might argue about something trivial, what movie to watch, whose turn to do dishes, whether Marcus's curfew should be extended now that he's graduated. Normal family stuff. Beautiful, ordinary, precious normal family stuff. Made possible by a kidney. Made possible by a secret that became a truth. Made possible by people who loved each other imperfectly but completely. I finished my dinner, washed my dishes, and stood at the sink for a moment, letting water run over my hands. The warmth was comforting, grounding. Tomorrow, I'd be back at the hospital. There would be more patients, more families, more impossible situations requiring wisdom I didn't always have. But tonight, I let myself feel grateful. Grateful for Robert's courage. Grateful for Marcus's openness. Grateful for Diane's strength. Grateful for Santos's mentorship and Kemper's trust. Grateful to be a doctor. Even though, maybe especially because, it meant carrying other people's stories in my heart and hoping I could honor them properly. Sometimes heroes wear white coats. Sometimes they wear hospital gowns. Sometimes they're 16-year-old kids who decide to trust when every instinct tells them to protect themselves. Sometimes they're stepdads who give pieces of themselves without needing recognition. Sometimes they're mothers who hold families together through impossible choices. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you get to witness love in its purest form. Not the greeting card version, but the messy, complicated, surgical version where people cut themselves open, literally or figuratively, so someone else can live. That's what I learned from the Chen family. That's what I carry with me every day I walk through the doors of St. Halstead. Medicine can save bodies, but love, real, stubborn, self-sacrificing love, that's what saves souls. And in the end, that's what we're all trying to do, isn't it? Save each other. One kidney, one truth, one moment of courage at a time. The city hummed outside my window. Life continued, as it always does. And somewhere in the future, Marcus Chen would become a doctor. He'd have his own patients, his own ethical dilemmas, his own moments of wondering if he was making the right choice. And maybe, when faced with an impossible situation, he'd remember what his stepdad taught him, that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the freedom to live without debt, and that sometimes the greatest courage is accepting that gift with grace. But that's a story for another day. Tonight, I'm just a 27-year-old resident who got to play a small part in something beautiful, who learned that medicine is as much about listening as prescribing, about timing as technique, about trusting people as treating symptoms. I turned off the lights, climbed into bed, and closed my eyes. Tomorrow would bring new patients, new challenges, new opportunities to either help or fail, or most likely some complicated mixture of both. But tonight I let myself believe that we'd done it right, that the Chen family was whole and happy, that love had won. Sometimes that's enough, sometimes that's everything. And as I drifted off to sleep, my last thought was this: in a world that often feels broken and chaotic, there are still people willing to give pieces of themselves to keep others alive. There are still families finding their way to each other through pain and fear and honesty. There are still moments where everything aligns perfectly. The timing, the truth, the courage, and healing happens. Not just medical healing, the deeper kind, the kind that stitches souls back together and makes people whole. That's the kind of doctor I want to be. That's the kind of human I want to be. And thanks to the Chen family, I'm learning how.